social media is their reality.
Yeah, if I'm feeling down, then I'll look on those things and they'll just make it worse.
They have designed their algorithms and their networks exactly to cater to human pathology in its most extreme forms.
I originally set out to make a documentary that explored the possible positive benefits of diminished or controlled social media use. What I actually uncovered was something far, far darker.
This whole AI explosion is going to do for journalists as much as anyone else. We're already having robot journalists. Well, some would say we had them before, called proper journalists, which they weren't. They were robot journalists. But now I'm talking real robot journalists. It's a report here this week. As reporters and editors find themselves the victims of layoffs at digital publishers and traditional newspaper chains alike, journalism generated by machine is on the rise. Roughly a third of the content published by Bloomberg News uses some form of automated technology. The system used by the company Cyborg is able to assist reporters in churning out thousands of articles on company earning reports each quarter. The program can dissect a financial report the moment it appears and spit out an immediate news story that includes most of the pertinent facts and figures. And unlike business reporters who find working on that kind of thing a snooze, it does so without complaint. Untiring and accurate, Cyborg helps Bloomberg in its race against Reuters, the main rival in the field of quick twitch business financial journalism, as well as giving it a fighting chance against a more recent player in the information race, hedge funds, which use artificial intelligence to serve their clients fresh facts. Financial markets are ahead of others in this, said John Micklethwait, editor-in-chief of Bloomberg. And in addition to covering company earnings for Bloomberg, robot reporters have been prolific producers of articles on minor league baseball for the Associated Press, high school football for the Washington Post, and earthquakes for the Los Angeles Times. And this is where it's going. A lot of journalists are going to be losing their jobs to robot reporters. I mean, you've seen that Chinese newsreader, robot AI newsreader that they've started using, and you saw in the news a few weeks ago. And another sign of the times in terms of journalism, public funds should be used to rescue local journalism, says report. Local news coverage could disappear unless the government provides direct financial support, according to an independent report on the future of the British media. And the same will apply around the world, in America, etc., which warns the industry's collapse poses a threat to the long-term sustainability of democracy. Well, that's the idea. Dame Frances Cairncross was appointed by the government last year to investigate ways to secure the future of high-quality journalism in Britain. Secure it or start it. Her report has concluded there should be a public investigation into the dominance of Facebook and Google, well, God on earth for that, in the advertising marketplace. She also recommends a new regulator to oversee the relationship between news outlets and technology giants, which have taken much of the advertising revenue that used to subsidize reporting. But the Cairncross review also concluded that many local newspapers, which are vital to a functioning democracy, are owned by debt-laden publishers who have cut investment and sacked hundreds of journalists in an effort to maintain profit margins. She drew parallels with once dominant businesses which have failed to make the digital leap, such as Kodak or Blockbuster, and said the priority should be ensuring high-quality journalism continues to be produced in Britain rather than attempting to save the newspaper industry in its current form. And some of the recommendations: direct funding for public interest news outlets, with public funds used to support the reporting of local democracy through a new Institute of Public Interest News. Investigation by the competition regulator into the online advertising marketplace, dominated by Facebook and Google, and a number of other things. Now, years ago, same in America, local newspapers that reported their particular area were owned by local companies, and then over time they were bought up by the big media giants that then basically centrally dictated how they reported their local area. So you had fewer people dictating the journalism of more and more. And if you look at the British media groups, there was one called Trinity Mirror, I think it changed its name now. And you look at the local newspapers in Britain that are owned by that group, it's legion. And one of the newspapers, the Manchester Evening News, ran a story about me that was completely inaccurate. But because it was group-centered, it started appearing in all these other newspapers in the group, in different towns and different cities around the country. Same story, written exactly the same, word for word, and published around them all. This is what happens when you centrally control the media. It means something like that, fundamentally untrue, can appear everywhere. And no one checks it. Only one person writes the story, and then it's run everywhere. And I contacted some of these, and I said, look, before I call my lawyers, can you just send me the evidence you have to support what you're saying? And they were taking it down very quickly because they had no information, no facts to support it. They're just repeating it. So I would love to have proper local journalism back. I was a local journalist when my football career ended, and I went into journalism in the 1970s. I was working on small local newspapers in Leicester. In fact, I worked on one, the first one that I joined was called the Leicester Advertiser. And well, crikey, if it had been human, it would have been on a life support machine. They had such a small circulation. But they were these were local newspapers that were owned by a company that was in that area. And then they started getting bought up and bought up and bought up. And increasingly, they're not local newspapers anymore. They're just strands of a national web, or even a beyond national web. And so I've got no sympathy, frankly, with propping up local newspapers owned by major groups. But I would love to see proper local newspapers run by people in that area returning. But that's not what the system wants, because what the system wants, which is why it's putting information now overwhelmingly and more on the internet through your Facebooks and through your Googles and stuff, it's because they want to centrally control it. And when you look at the domination of these internet corporations of information now, you can see that they're doing it. What local newspapers, proper local newspapers, used to do was offer diversity. So, for instance, you would have a local radio station in an area, and you'd have a local newspaper a weekly newspaper, a daily newspaper, maybe if it was a city, and you had some diversity. But what's happened now is that diversity is disappeared by these corporations buying up media. I mean, you can look at many towns and cities in America where the media is owned by the same people. The radio, the newspaper is owned by the same people. There is no diversity. And so you have, I worked on a local radio station called BRNB in Birmingham, second biggest city in Britain. And it was run by a company that owned BRNB. That was it, BRNB. And then as the time has passed, all these once independent local radio stations were bought up by giant groups. The Capital Radio in London is one of them. And they were then dictating the playlist, what records they played, from a central point. They were dismantling the local journalism newsroom working at the station, covering that area. They were dismantling them. So the whole reason for local radio, which is to and local newspapers, which is to cover that area, gone. It's just one bland centralized blob. And of course it's happening in America, where there's a great tradition, a great history of local newspapers, and they're disappearing because they can't compete with the internet giants. Now,